So I'm going to call these episodes my dating diaries, although I'm not dating. I had promised years ago that I would document what this time looked like, what it felt like, and just talk about my experience and kind of put it all together later on. But I hadn't been doing that. I think I did that last year. I did some recordings and some conversations. And did I keep it? I don't know. I don't even know if I can find it right now. But the last couple of days has been it felt like spiritual warfare mentally, battling my own feelings, my own thoughts, and even about surrounding marriage. I went on a date with a friend the other day. She has been having some similar experiences, and I didn't know that she's a part of a small group that I attend on Tuesdays, and it's just so interesting just to know or even see that other people are going through similar things. And sometimes we can feel like we're in this alone during this time. I know for sure I can say that I've had my mentor support, continuously checking in on me, praying for me, interceding for me, he and his wife, my pastor, my apostle Emmanuel, and Pastor Ibakun, both my parents, and my friend, my closest friend, Ruth. When I had to move back to the Bahamas from Edmonton, she was one or the only person that kept connected to me on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis. And that's not why she's my friend, but I'm saying that to say that during this season, it felt very lonely. Not that I didn't know that I could reach out to other people, which I did at certain points, but the loneliness where I'm going to believe that the Lord needed to isolate me to deal with some internal things, things about family, things about myself that I hadn't noticed, that I believed were good, that I also want to call it strongholds. There were some strongholds that were keeping me bound mentally. And in terms of, and I'm on the road, so I'm on my way to a client, and I felt like I should document my thoughts now. But some of the thoughts that were keeping me bound before, and I'll share this, and I think this is the first time I'm going to share this outside of sharing this with Ruth, is I did not believe that I can be committed to one person. I believed that variety was the spice of life, and I thought that connection within itself was a part of, like David, like the similarity that I had with David, which I found was not true. And I do believe in understanding that because that is not true, that is one of the things. Sorry, there's lots of potholes. That's one of the things that the enemy used to try to distract me. And distraction came in forms of even after getting confirmation, even after connecting with Apostle, even after, praying and having continuous prayer and being connected to someone, still not just looking, but like, oh God, you sure this ain't the person? And often having those back and forth moments in my mind. The Bible says that a double-minded person gets nothing. And every time I remember, when I realize that my mind is going back and forth with this thought versus what God said or what I heard or what I believe, I realized that even with me going back and forth and trying to and thinking that I'm being logical or rational or thinking this thing through and um, wanting to be responsible, still wasn't having faith in God, still wasn't respecting what He, as the sovereign God, has said. And now that I've spent time with the Lord and just been trying to get clarity, I realized that there were questions that I had that I was too ashamed to ask. And so some of the questions that I had about with God was the person that He sent me, how the person was packaged, how they do things, why they do things the way they do it. And I think because parts of me hadn't healed, I still wanted things that were in the world that this person wasn't giving me. And I think from the time I've met him, he hadn't really been a secular person. I was the one that partied. I was the one that went out, and, like all those kind of things. But because the similarity or the only understanding that I had of love was from the world, and every time I tried to measure him to the measuring stick of the world, or what I remember, or what I think this love should look like, it kept falling short. And it kept making me feel like a failure, which then brought more frustration and caused me to feel angry and resentful toward the person who I thought that God had sent to me, or who I think God sent to me. This morning, though, I watched this what is it called, Relationship Restored. This couple who went 4 years, they lived together and never had sex. And I was just listening to their story. Not that I believe it has any pertinence to my life, but the value that I took from it is the weight. I think based on hearing them share their story, there were decisions that were made on both ends that were clear, that were conscious, that were respected, that were understood. And I believe, and I feel as if for me, I made decisions and I kept going back on the decisions. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but making a decision to not have sex when you don't have somebody, you're not in a relationship, is fine. But now not having sex and having to now verbalize how this is going to look within a relationship doesn't even isn't normal in today's world. And because you cannot define it to anything that you've ever seen, because this isn't something um, that you can steadily look at, you can glean from another relationship, from other people, especially because even in some Christian communities, having sex with the person who you're going to marry, for some of them, is okay. And so now when we're making bold statements as to we're not going to have sex at all until marriage, or you've made a mistake, but now you want to continue to honor God, because I've made mistakes several times during this waiting season, because my flesh kept crying out, because the things that I needed to die within me. Like, things that needed to die within me were wanting attention or needing gratification from a man through sex. Or there were times when I would have an issue in my relationship, and rather than have a clear conversation or fix or talk about the issue, we would have sex, and we would think that fixed the issue, which it never did. um and so for many relationships, looking back, that was how we tried to stay together or manage a relationship, which never works and it doesn't help. And now, being in a God conscious relationship, it was very, very hard to navigate something that you've never done or seen or fully understood. And over the last couple of weeks, because I've made some very hard decisions and hard mistakes, so I broke it off with the person who I was in a relationship with. I'm not sure, even up to now, if that was the decision that I was supposed to make or not, but it felt like I went through a desert within the last 3 months. Um, Not fully isolated, but it just felt treacherous. Like, that's the best way I could put it. Like, um, and it was not as if I can't hear from God for other things, but when it came to the relationship, when it came to asking questions about that, it was like crickets, not hearing anything. Um, and it brought more frustration because I started to question whether I valued just being in a relationship just to say that I was in a relationship. And I wasn't sure if that was the enemy causing me to feel more confused and go back and forth in my own mind about the decision that I made, or this was what God actually wanted. And so this last few months has been a lot of questions. And even now, at some points, I realized that I had drifted away from Christ. My spiritual walk was starting to fizzle because of disappointment, because of hurt, because of frustration, and everything didn't just revolve around the relationship, but there were other things that were happening in my family. Um, God sends this word, and then there are so many other things that start to happen that didn't look like the word. Like, God, you said, I'm gonna be great. Like, I'm gonna be this millionaire. I'm gonna get a house before the end of the year. Then no money, no home, less clients. So it became a bit of it felt like warfare, child. I don't know if y'all have ever experienced this, and how you made it through, but right now, the making it through for me looks like ensuring that I stay connected to my spiritual family, trying to ensure that I stay in prayer, like I stay connected to Christ, even when things don't quite look like how I would imagine or wanted them to look. Like, this has been a tough season, child. Um, yeah, this has been a tough season, and I just wanted to share a little bit of what has been going on. So yeah, things are getting better for sure. Business is getting busier. When God gives you a thing, then you need to do some of the work to maintain the things. And I'm realizing even during this season of wait, if I had gotten the things, if I had gotten marriage, if all those things had worked out, did I know how to sustain a relationship? Um, and like I said, there's still some things that needed some work within me, and I'm not justifying right or wrong or what this weight looks like, why this weight is the weight. But what I am saying is, truly, I do feel like there is a light at the end of this tunnel of waiting. And a part of the light is understanding that God knows best. He can only work with vessels that are willing. Um, and sometimes He does take you through seasons of that looks hard or feels frustrating. Because are we in this wait? Are we in this relationship with Christ because we want a relationship with a guy? Or do we actually really, really love Jesus? And I think during this season of wait and just my bad, during the season of wait, is it possible that it was just a test? And if you're waiting and you feel frustrated and you feel like things are not looking the way that you want them to look, is it possible that this is just all a part of the test? Um, the invigilator doesn't speak during the test. And so he's not speaking because he wants to see where your heart is. Girl, I'm going to see you in the next video.